Justice for Breonna is multi-layered. What we were able to accomplish today through the civil settlement against the officers is tremendous, but it's only a portion of a single layer. When officers cause the death of an individual, it is imperative that we seek justice not only in the criminal system, but also in our civil system. That's when we hold people financially responsible. But it's important to know here that a financial settlement was non-negotiable without significant police reform, and that's what we were able to do today. We sought forth, as we went through negotiating the terms of this settlement and the reform, to engage police officers within the community, not just when they're dispatched to runs, but to get out, to volunteer in those communities in which they serve, to get to know their communities in other settings, to live within their communities, to dispatch social workers when they're needed for mental health crises, to recognize at-risk behavior by officers, implementing the early warning system, and to overhaul the system by which we execute search warrants that caused the death of Breonna Taylor on March 13th. It's important for her family that they minimize the risk of what happened to Breonna Taylor happening to any other family in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're going to continue that fight beyond the city of Louisville, Kentucky, and throughout this country to protect and reform police departments across America. We recognize that this reform is not all-encompassing, and there's still work to be done. And we commit our time, our talent, and our resources to continue to work with the community to fight the systemic racism plaguing our city. We will continue to work on behalf and with the protesters who have put their freedom on the line to bring awareness to not just Breonna Taylor, but to the systemic problems facing our city. For we know that without their voice, we would not be here today. Attorneys will ensure that prosecutors handling the case of protesters truly are administrators of justice and not being punitive simply because those individuals chose to use their voice to shine a light on what was going on in Louisville, Kentucky. We look forward to being a bridge from this community to our elected leaders, to continue to push for change. We will continue to push for the mayor's office and our other elected leaders to implement policies put forth in a path forward which calls for community investment, the support for small businesses, affordable housing, closing the education achievement gap, jobs and workforce development, and as an overhaul to the criminal justice system. That document was produced and signed by over 50 organizations in this city, and it needs to be taken seriously. We look forward to working with other grassroots organizations to ensure that we continue to hold our elected leaders accountable, but also to ensure that we continue to work with our elected leaders, because we will not get the policy changes that we need, we would not get the legal changes that we need if we don't hold our elected leaders accountable, but in that same vein, we have to be willing to work with our elected leaders. The beauty of what happened here today, the reform and the settlement, and again, it's just a civil suit, happens when we work together. So we do thank Mayor Fisher and his team for committing to the reform. This is unheard of in one of these cases where you get a financial settlement and police reform, but again, it was important to us, to Breonna's family, to the lawyers involved, and it was important for us to give that back to the community, which has been fighting so hard to say Breonna Taylor's name. Lastly, as I stated when I started, justice for Breonna Taylor is multi-layered. We are not going to stop our calls to hold the officers responsible for Breonna's death accountable. We're going to continue to put pressure on the Attorney General's office to present a fair case to the grand jury, and we're going to wait. We know that that indictment is coming from the grand jury. We have faith that that indictment is coming from the grand jury. In addition to the Attorney General's office, we must remember that the FBI is also doing an investigation into whether there were criminal civil rights violations leading to and after Breonna Taylor's death. So we're going to be looking for the federal indictment to come from the Department of Justice as well. But it's important that people know that the city of Louisville, they're not the ones that can bring the charges. So today, what we did here was to do what we could do to bring a little bit of police reform, and it's just a start. But we finished the first mile in a marathon, and we got a lot more miles to go till we achieve and cross that finish line.